crew to save the day.
The Mighty House crew is on the job. This is
Mighty House.
All right, we're back, and today we're going to talk a little bit about Hurricane Ian and how you can build your house to withstand hurricanes like this and some of the things that Rich has done since he's down there. But first, click on that subscribe button, dingle on the bell, and that way you'll get notified next time we post a new video. So let's go ahead and get started here with the map first. So if you can't tell, I know people think that we're in the same room all the time, and
Right.
we're what, 1,200 miles away?
1,433.
Exactly. So that's how far apart we are, even though it looks like we're in the same room. We're in the same shop.
Right.
But anyway, you're like,
TV magic.
woo! So you're like down in here somewhere, right?
Yes, I'm right there.
Right in that area, right there.
Yes. So where that red is, they call that the cone.
Uh-huh.
So we were not inside that cone.
But
That is not to say we were not affected at all by this storm.
uh-huh. So okay, let's start out with what did you do to prepare for this? Because you rode the thing out. You didn't leave.
No, I mean, this is my second hurricane. Irma was my first 5 years ago.
Right?
And we stayed and withstood everything. And the tide surge was nothing like this storm, but the winds were significantly higher. We dealt with 140 mile an hour winds. But so when this storm was approaching, I was literally out of the country. So the storm hit Southwest Florida, came ashore on Wednesday. I flew in from London on Tuesday night, landed in Miami, drove through the rain bands, got back to the island, and then I just dropped my bags, changed into work clothes, jumped in my truck, and I helped some friends tie down boats and things like that. And we did all that in the rain. Wednesday morning, the storm was sort of coming in. It didn't really hit shore till 10 or 11. So all we could do, because my house is less than a year old and built to a current code.
Right.
All I did is go out in the garage and made sure anything that could be damaged that was on the floor, get it off the floor, and then put my cars on jack stands.
Okay.
Just buy yourself another foot and a half.
Right.
Beyond that, my house is designed to withstand winds up to 175 or 80 miles an hour. So I wasn't worried about wind. This storm, what made this storm really unusual was its width, its intensity. It intensified Monday into Tuesday, but its width, it was 500 miles wide.
Yeah. I mean, you can
That's
see
really
by the
unusual.
map.
So you see how wide that thing is. When we were overseas, we were watching this, and Friday it was going to the Panhandle, all the way up there to the armpit.
Up here.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Saturday it was still going into Tampa.
Right. That was just like right in there, right in this
Right.
area.
So everybody in Tampa bugged out.
Uh-huh.
They went to Georgia. They went to the East Coast. They all took off. And this is part of the problem with how you plan for a hurricane. Granted, we get a week's notice, right? It's not like a tornado where you got 15 seconds. Tornadoes are far scarier than hurricanes.
Right.
But the National Weather Service, and I'm not knocking them, but they have to keep working on these models and figure this out, because everybody from Tampa scattered. So now when they said, okay, it's turning right and it's going to go further south, where are you going to go? You can't go north. Everything's already booked. All the hotels are full from people from Tampa. You can't go to Lauderdale on the East Coast, because as it turns right, it crosses the state and it's a direct hit on Lauderdale.
Right.
So, and that's what this one did. It crossed the state and then it went north, and it was a category 1, almost a 2 when it hit North Carolina.
Right.
A few days later. So preparedness is a lot to do with just getting yourself ready. Like, if you've got furniture outside, you bring it in. A lot of common sense stuff.
Right. But I think because you have just recently built your home and it's built to these current codes, you felt comfortable and safe enough to stay in it. It's not like you had a 70-year-old home that was right on the beach.
Correct. Yeah, I'm not on the beach. That's a plus. The house is brand new, so that does help, and it's built to a different code. But the other thing, I mean, it was actually ironic is Wednesday afternoon when it was too late to do anything or go anywhere. I mean, the streets were flooded. We had 5 feet of water in the streets. You couldn't see my mailbox. It was underwater.
Right.
So
But
you're
you
not
said
driving anywhere. You're there. Like, and
Right.
they even tell you if you have an emergency, you're on your own.
Sure.
Police and fire cannot come help you. You're on your own at that point, and that's a decision you have to make. You know, and it's a scary decision, but again, we knew wind-wise we were fine, but the water that came up was a little scary. So another thing too was this storm. They kept predicting this 12 to 16-foot storm surge on the east side. And that day, our high tide was between 3:30 and 4 where we're at. You know, it varies up and down the coast. And they were already calling for a +3, a lunar tide, which gives you 3 feet higher than the normal high tide. And then we had the storm on top of that.
right.
So nobody really knew what that number was going to be. And that's where the National Weather Service really did do a good job, or the hurricane
Prediction
they
Center?
did say, yeah, expect the 12. And one network down here did say, yes, we are including the +3. 'Cause that's one of those things. When Irma hit, they said you're going to have a 9-foot surge.
Okay.
But the water all disappeared. So we lost 7 feet of water. So we're like, well, does the 9 include the 7 coming back? Because then it's only a 2-foot surge.
Okay.
And that's ultimately what happened. So with this storm, it literally, so Tampa Bay is, point up there again,
in there.
about right in that area. Tampa Bay went dry.
Right. Yeah. No, it sucked it all out. All the water got
It
sucked out. of
sucked
Tampa
all
Bay.
that water south because the storm rotating, it's a low. So I'm on screen, I gotta go
counterclockwise.
the opposite
Yeah,
direction. Yes.
It's going this. It's
It
going.
literally sucked that
this way.
water south, but then after it made the eye wall, it pushed it back north and it pushed it back towards Naples, Florida, Sanibel, Fort Myers, North Fort Myers Beach, Pine Island, and all, and they got hammered.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then because it was, I think they said it was 5 miles an hour shy of a 5.
Correct. It was just under.
Like
a
in tornado talk, that's like finger of God.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
if you ever watch Twister, it's like, yeah, what's a 5? It's finger of God. You're just erased. You know. But no, it's a very unusual circumstance, you know, to see a storm do what it did. So what we did to prepare was, you know, when hurricane season comes, my propane tank, I have a 500-gallon propane tank.
Okay.
I ran my generator. I have a dual fuel generator. My generator runs on propane. Made sure it runs fine, made sure all my wiring's good. You make sure everything's off the floor, make sure everything that's loose outside is brought inside. You know, it's just that kind of stuff. Problem is a lot of our people are snowbirds, right? So they're
Sure.
not here for the summer.
Right.
And you know, maybe they call their home watch company and they may do some of this, but again, why would you? It's going to Tampa. It's going to the Panhandle.
Sure.
We're fine.
Right.
It's the turning. So the lack of notice with the turn is what hurt. We only had 12 hours notice on that last turn,
Okay.
if that. And that's what really got weird.
Right.
So,
Well, that's cool. So what kind of stuff do you have ready to go? Are you stocking
so
up on your
we
toilet
stock
paper?
up-
Or what were
so-
you doing?
yeah, not so much that, but we stock up on bottled water.
Okay.
So a lot of little stupid tricks. So we stock up on bottled water, and if there's an imminent threat of a hurricane, we will put majority of the bottled water in the freezer
Okay.
so that it all freezes. That way, when the power goes out, you take bottled water, you can put it in your refrigerator and keep some in your freezer, and now your refrigerator and freezer will stay cooler for 2 days longer.
Okay.
You know, electrically, obviously I have a generator, but mine's not a whole house self-switching. You know, it's not a high-end generator that way. It's a portable.
Right.
So it can't go outside till most of the storm's passed.
Okay. So you were
You know, unless you want to be one of those knuckleheads that runs it in your garage and kills your family that way.
right.
Survived the hurricane, died from generator.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, we have a lot of canned foods and stuff like that we we don't really stock up on it, but you know, if you see stuff on sale, because you know its shelf life's a couple of years.
Sure.
But then I suppose the after hurricane thing is kind of fun because, and a lot of us like it. That's when you get out and you start helping neighbors fix things, clean up their yards, this and that. And oh, my fridge is down. We're going to have a cookout tonight. Okay. You know. It's not all bad. You know what I mean? We
Sure.
all go help each other, and everybody has. I mean, you drive around now. It's been a month, and like where I live, you can't even tell we had a hurricane.
That's amazing. So did they shut down the island where they weren't allowing people back on? Did they shut that bridge down, or were you
Not
able to
for
come
us.
and go?
We were hardly affected. I think the largest wind gust we had where I live is 85 miles an hour because we're far enough south.
Okay.
The water receded, so high tide was between 3:30 and 4. As soon as high tide hit, the water started going out. It receded faster than it came in. And I mean, that's when it took all the debris out. So, you know, if you're a boater, you got to be a little careful in the canals because, I mean, there's garbage cans, porta johns, lawn furniture.
Cars.
You know, you name it, it's floating out there. Mostly cable boxes because apparently the cable company doesn't use the bolts in the bottom of their covers.
Really?
So they all floated off.
Oh, my God.
So, you know, just some silly stuff. There's just common sense stuff, right? But
Right.
anyway.
So-
yeah, I mean, it's how you get ready.
Right. All right. Good. So then kind of look at some of the devastation. We got some pictures to kind of scroll through. And this is kind of what you were seeing down there, is it not?
Yeah, so South Naples, Port Royal, from Port Royal all the way up through Fort Myers, all of the coastal communities, they got hit with the surge. This just pushed so much water over seawalls and through the neighborhoods that it was just, it's amazing. So even if you have like even a new house on a good lot,
Right.
we're getting kind of ahead of ourselves. So like, because it's like your next question.
Right.
But
Well, let's go ahead and get into it then. Somehow, some of these houses made it through, and you can see pictures of it. I mean, here's the water running down the streets, but some houses were fine, and then others looked like this.
yes.
And so what's the difference here?
It's really just your construction technique. So all of the newer homes that we built in the last 20 years or since 2006, Hurricane Andrew, when it hit 23 years ago, it hit Homestead, Florida, and pretty much wipes Homestead off the map.
Right.
Miami-Dade County decided to change their building code, and they went from here to here. They really did.
They stepped up their game.
And then the coastal communities on the west coast of Florida adopted the Miami-Dade Code. So you have an international residential code,
Right.
and then our adopted codes. So we have a state of Florida building code, Miami-Dade version, and it's far superior when it comes to structural. So the houses that were built to those codes, they had water through the lower level.
Like this.
But it says in the code, and FEMA has a lot to do with this down here. FEMA says that you cannot have any living space lower than 1 foot above base flood. And FEMA revised their flood maps in 2016. So some areas they could lower the first floor level, some areas they raised the first floor level.
And then those homes that were built in the 80s and 90s that were above that flood now are below it.
Some of them are, but if they were built to that level, they didn't have the water inundation. They may still have had damage because they weren't built the same way. They weren't concrete-filled block. They may not have had ties on all their trusses. They didn't have the same nailing or screw pattern on all the roof sheathing. You know, so there's a lot of variations to all this, which, you know, it's morbid, but yet very interesting when you drive around and you look at the failures.
Yep.
And I guarantee you FEMA is doing their audits. They're figuring out what worked and what didn't. And
Right.
kudos to them for that. And same with Miami-Dade.
Right. So they're over, even though Miami-Dade didn't get hit, they're over on the West Coast now doing inspections, seeing how things are built, what held up, what didn't, and that way they can adjust their code.
Exactly. And so the houses that were built to the newer code, the majority of them, the houses are absolutely fine. The house I am building in South Naples right now, the first floor line is 12 feet above sea level.
Okay.
Base flood is 11. That house had 3 feet of water, or 4 feet of, well, one garage is lower than the other.
Right.
But one garage had 3 feet in it, the other had 4 feet of water in it.
Wow.
Which Never made it up the stairs to the first floor of the house. The house was still 7. You could stand at your landing in your garage and look down at the water, covering your Ferrari, your Lamborghini,
Yes.
your Porsche. Well, unfortunately, that's what happened.
Yeah.
They can't raise the garage floor heights too much because the streets are too low.
Okay.
The street in front of the house I'm building sits at 2.
Okay.
Just think sea level is 0, street's 2 feet above sea level.
Yep.
And then my first floor is at 12 feet. But my garage has to be at around 6 or 5 because otherwise the driveway's so steep you can't pull the car up, right?
Right. Because the lot's
I don't
not big
think they're
enough to
gonna
make the driveway long enough.
The
to be-
length of the driveway long enough, exactly. So your incline's too steep. But the way you do it is you just build a garage with lifts in it, right? And you put the taller ceilings in, and you put lifts in. You got a Ferrari in the garage, put it up on the lift. It's fine. Your lift might be shot after the storm surge, but at least your Ferrari's safe.
Right. The car's good.
And I saw that. There's a house that I saw down in Naples that this guy probably lost $5 million in cars. I mean, there's an old Ferrari. It's got to be like a '67 California GT. You know what I mean? Like a 250. That could be a $30 million car sitting there with the hood open, doors open, trying to dry it out.
Right.
How do you keep the aluminum from being eaten by the salt now?
Right. Or all the electronics and the wiring and all that
Yeah.
it's just gone.
So it's weird. The houses that are built, the newer homes, survive the storm just fine.
Right.
Even on Sandbell and so on. But unless you raise the streets, the garages are still going to be an issue. So again, if you're a car guy, you put it in a car. There's plenty of parking garages, and they sell garage condos. I mean, if you got $3 million in cars, I'm pretty sure you can afford the $100,000 for the condo inland.
Well, that's the other question.
To just leave it in your garage is silly.
Here in the Midwest, we deal with fresh water. Is there a different way to prepare for salt water than there is for fresh water?
Salt water, you don't really prepare for it. You just have to rinse the hell out of everything. So a great example is most of my yard was underwater. And it's all salt water. So we ran our sprinklers every single day
Just to wash
to
the
rinse
salt.
the grass and get the roots cleared. And we have probably one of the nicest lawns in the area now. I got my water bill, and it's significantly higher, and I'm not supposed to water every single day, so they could ticket me for that.
Right.
But for the cost of resodding my yard versus spending an extra $70 on my water bill, it's worth it to me.
Right. And whatever the fine may or may not be.
Yeah, I'll pay the fine. It's still cheaper than resodding.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's very complex, and it's hurt so many people in so many different ways. So one of the things that hurts the most are mobile homes or manufactured homes. So a lot of these parks were put together in the 50s and 60s.
Right.
And not everybody down here is a gazillionaire, and maybe your grandparents bought a little, plot of land there and they threw a mobile home on or a manufactured home, and your family's been using it for 40 years.
Right.
Yeah, now it got hit.
Well, and
Now the cities have to figure out, do we allow them to come back?
don't they strap those down? I thought they were like bolted into pads and piers, and they just
kind
didn't.
of
They weren't sit
are.
there.
They kind of are, but your first floor is still not above base flood.
Right.
And again, a storm surge, the power of water, you're not stopping it. I mean, the picture you got up right now is a perfect example of a home that did not wash away,
Right.
but its foundation got washed away or part of it shifted. It's still structurally not sound.
Correct.
So
and then you got the poor Ford pickup underneath it.
Yeah, that's nice. It's crazy. No, I mean, some of the stuff you can see. I mean, like, when you see tornadoes, when you see a 2x4 sticking through a tree,
Yes.
think of the velocity of a 2x4 to actually go through a tree like that.
Right.
So you never, Mother Nature's a bitch, so it just is what it is.
Okay, so we kind of touched on the next question a little bit, and that is, they're down there, they're inspecting right now, they're going to be making some changes. Have you seen anything right now that maybe is going to start to change in the building code to improve the building code so that these newer homes that are going to be built again can withstand what just came through?
I think that, in my personal opinion, the one code that needs to change, and on less expensive homes, they still use aluminum soffit panels.
Okay.
And aluminum soffit panels and and vinyl siding and all that needs to be banned. The problem with soffit panels, whether they're vinyl or aluminum, is that they cannot be attached permanently for winds like that, and they add to uplift.
Okay.
When they start coming off, you're now giving a place for air to circulate and create uplift. Stress on the trusses, stress on the plywood or on the shingles. Not to mention they become, when they start flying, that's usually what goes through everybody's screen rooms and so on.
Right.
So,
And that's hitting the houses that are withstanding it, and it's the debris in the air that actually does the damage, and it's not
Exactly.
not the winds and the rain and the water.
right. I mean, so like our house, literally, so as far as do I see them changing codes? No. I don't see the codes improving, but I can't speak to Fort Myers Beach. I can't speak to Sanibel. I do not know for sure if they follow Miami-Dade code.
Okay.
Naples and Marco Island do. If Sanibel and Fort Myers do not, they should.
Or they're going to now.
Or they're going to, because we came through Irma pretty much unscathed, and this one, even with the water, we were elevated enough where we avoided that. So, and the elevation comes from FEMA. They set your first floor line, basically.
Right.
But then the construction techniques are all coming from that Miami-Dade code.
Right. And
So,
again, you can flip through and see pictures where a house, and yours is an example of that, is absolutely fine. It's not damaged. It doesn't look like this at all. So,
no, quite honestly, Wednesday afternoon during the storm, my wife and I were sitting on the couch and we couldn't even hear the storm. You could see the trees bending sideways and we couldn't hear it. The house is well insulated, done, like I said, differently. Impact glass and impact windows. You know, if something strikes it hard enough, the glass can break. The idea is that it will stop it from coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Because if a window breaks, it pressurizes the unit, and then again you have uplift, you pressurize, the building blows apart. So it's important to keep your building envelope, think of it as a balloon,
right.
right? When we did all that green stuff, right? You
Yeah.
got a thermal envelope and a pressure envelope.
Yeah.
Well, hurricanes, tornadoes mess with your pressure envelope. Any opening in that pressure envelope, just like a balloon, what does it do? It pops.
Right.
And that's what your house does. It's so silly, simple, but yet trying to explain it to people and understand why you're spending the money to do this,
Yeah.
some people just don't get it.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, you know what? We've been talking now for what, 3-4 hours, Rich? Something like that?
Yeah. it seems
Anyway,
like-
we ran way too long on this topic, so we're going to split this in at least 2. So if you like this, stay tuned for next week, and we'll post the part 2 of how to survive these hurricanes. And make sure you dingle on the bell down there and subscribe. That way you get notified for the next one. And until next week,
keep it square and level.
keep it, something like that. Yeah, keep it square and level. Until next time.
Until next time.